Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous. Donald Trump is right. He tweeted on June 22nd that a rigged 2020 election will be the scandal of our times. But the villain rigging the 2020 election is not China. The villain rigging the 2020 election is not Nancy Pelosi. It's Donald Trump. In fact, it's Donald Trump aided and abetted by the Republican Party. Remember, the Republican Party has indulged in voter suppression for at least 50 years. Currently, it is training 50,000 poll watchers to challenge citizens trying to vote on Election Day. Some see this as voter intimidation. But things get worse. Republican politicians have eliminated 1,200 polling stations in the southern USA, limiting the number of places where you can vote in cities that usually vote Democratic. The goal is to create long lines that force voters to give up after a 6-hour wait, or that discourage voters from even going to the polls. And according to Mother Jones, in just 3 years, Republicans have scrubbed more than 17 million names from the voter rolls. The state where Mike Pence was governor, Indiana, has purged the greatest number of voters, removing 22.3% of the state's voters from its rolls. Both Virginia and Wisconsin removed 14%, and Maine, Oklahoma, and Massachusetts removed between 11 and 12.1%. Donald Trump has good reason to be concerned about his chances of winning the 2020 election by fair means. As of July 15th, Trump was the worst polling incumbent since 1996. To counter this, Trump has suggested something unprecedented in American history, moving the voting date. He argues that mail-in voting will produce a flood of fraudulent votes, and that we have to wait to vote until the coronavirus lifts and people can once again go safely to the polls. Trump's Attorney General, Bill Barr, has apparently been tasked with finding loopholes that would allow Trump to postpone the election. But that's not all. Some speculate that Donald Trump will invoke a national emergency to suspend the election. In fact, the Brennan Center at New York University has compiled a list of 136 presidential emergency powers designed for a national security crisis. Emergency powers that Trump might use to suspend the election. On May 29th, Trump threatened to invoke emergency powers under the Insurrection Act of 1807 and to call up the U.S. military against domestic protesters. But since then, he's found ways to put the military in the streets, tear gassing, beating, and arresting protesters without the Insurrection Act. But suppressing the Democratic vote, postponing Election Day, and declaring a state of emergency are not the only rigging schemes that Donald Trump has up his sleeve. There are others, and some of them are just plain scary. Here's the most disturbing scenario of them all. It's a 12-step process outlined July 3rd by Timothy E. Worth, a senator from Colorado, and Tom Rogers, the founder of CNBC and MSNBC, in a Newsweek opinion piece. It's a scheme Donald Trump could use to hold the White House even if he loses the election. It's startling and it's darkly disturbing. But Worth and Rogers are convinced it is the sort of thing, quote, the sort of corrupt use of executive powers that Donald Trump is willing to employ, close quote. No wonder Worth and Rogers call Donald Trump's attempted manipulations of the upcoming election Trump's plot against America. Here's the 11-step plan, most of it in Worth and Rogers' own words. First, Joe Biden wins the popular vote and carries the key swing states of Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania by decent but not overwhelming margins. Second, Donald Trump immediately declares that the voting was rigged, that there was mail-in ballot fraud, and that the Chinese were behind a plan to provide fraudulent mail-in ballots and other election hacking throughout the 4 key swing states that gave Biden his victory. Third, having railed against the Chinese throughout the campaign, calling Biden soft on China, Trump delivers his narrative claiming the Chinese have interfered in the U.S. election. Fourth, Trump indicates that this is a major national security issue, and he invokes emergency powers, directing the Justice Department to investigate the alleged activity in the swing states. The legal justification for the presidential powers he invokes has already been developed and issued by Barr. Step 5. The investigation is intended to tick down the clock toward December 14th, the deadline when each state's electoral college electors must be appointed. This is the very issue that the Supreme Court harped on in Bush versus Gore, when the justices ruled that the election process had to be brought to a close, thus forbidding the further counting of ballots. Step 6. All 4 swing states have Republican control of both their upper and lower houses of their state legislatures. Those state legislatures refuse to allow any electoral college slate to be certified until the so-called national security investigation is complete. Step 7. The Democrats will have begun a legal action to certify the results in those 4 states and the appointment of the Biden state of electors, arguing that Trump has manufactured a national security emergency in order to create the ensuing chaos. Step 8. The issue goes up to the Supreme Court, which, unlike the 2000 election, does not decide the election in favor of the Republicans. However, it indicates again that the December 14th Electoral College deadline must be met, that the president's national security powers legally authorize him to investigate potential foreign country intrusion into the national election, and if no electoral college slate can be certified by any state by December 14th, the electoral college must meet anyway and cast its votes. Step 9. The electoral college meets, and without the electors from those 4 states being represented, neither Biden nor Trump has sufficient votes to get an electoral college majority. Step 10. The election is thrown into the House of Representatives, pursuant to the Constitution, under the relevant constitutional process. The vote in the House is by state delegation, where each delegation casts 1 vote, which is determined by the majority of the representatives in that state. Step 11, currently there are 26 states that have a majority Republican House delegation and only 23 states that have a majority Democratic delegation. There is 1 state, Pennsylvania, that has an evenly split delegation. Even if the Democrats were to pick up seats in Pennsylvania and hold all their 2018 House gains, the Republicans would have a 26 to 24 delegation majority. Step 12. This vote would enable Donald Trump to retain the presidency. Worth and Rogers remind us of what John Bolton's Trump book revealed, that, quote, Donald Trump will pay any price, make any deal, bend any rule to assure his own survival and success. Let me change that to Donald Trump will pay any price, make any deal, and bend any rule to support his delusion of grandeur, his delusion of success. Worth and Rogers want us to erupt in protest against Trump's plot against America the way we have erupted in protest against the death of George Floyd. They want our protest to act as what they call a people's firewall. Worth and Rogers also urge that Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, should immediately ask the Judiciary, Commerce, Armed Services, and Intelligence Committees to hold hearings on how steps can be taken to safeguard against this scenario, especially how to confront any invocation of emergency powers by the President. Worth and Rogers want loud voices of outrage from government officials and lawmakers at all levels, from civic associations and civil rights groups, from business groups and trade associations, who have to recognize, they say, that the economic chaos would result from this kind of coup. They want to hear the voices of lawyers, academics, and student groups practiced in resisting government policy. And of course, they want to hear the voices of editorial, press people, both local and national. Worth and Rogers want the military to issue clear signals that this will not pass. They conclude that the president has to know there will be overwhelming resistance to any post-election chaos to undermine our constitutional order. He must know that the people's firewall will not yield to lawlessness. Alas, I am not sure that this people's firewall will ever arise, but it would be nice, and it might just save America's democracy from a dictator for life. This is Howard Bloom, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Now, for that infamous, sleazy, slimy, sneaky, seditious, terrible, where can I find more S words, sibilant words? Little off button. I think I've got it.